In this video, we are going to talk about loops. A loop is a very simple yet powerful command, and it's one you'll be using a lot. You can find the loop under the flow commands section. So what exactly is a loop? A loop is a container that holds other commands. The commands inside of the loop will be ran for the number of cycles that you specify. The commands are ran in order from top to bottom, one by one. All of the commands are ran in the loop before it restarts. So let me show you an example of what I mean. I'm going to specify the number of cycles to be 2 and hit enter. I'm going to then drag an alert into the loop, and I'm going to set the message to be 1. I'm then going to put a short wait of 1 second, and then I can drag another alert, but in this case I'm just going to copy it with Control C, paste with Control V, right click edit, and choose 2. So now when I run this program, what's going to happen is first we're going to come into the loop and we're going to come to the top command because the commands are ran in order from top to bottom in one by one. So all we're going to get is this first message, this first alert message that says 1, and when I hit OK, we're now waiting. And then after 1 second, we then get the second alert message that says 2. And now because this is a loop and we chose 2 cycles, it's gonna go right back up to the top and start over again. So now we see the 1 second wait, and then we see the 2. So as you can see, what's happening here is all of the commands inside of the loop are running from top to bottom, one by one. So now that we have a basic understanding of what a loop is, let's dive in a little deeper and look at the components which make it up. The number of cycles here is an input where you can specify how many times you want to run the commands inside of the loop. So I put 2 cycles here, and as you saw, this whole thing, all of the commands inside of the loop ran 2 times. You can put any number in here or any other data type that returns a number. So let me show you a different example. We've already seen an example with a number. So what is a data type that can return a number? Well, we've worked with variables in the last video, and that's a good example. So let's try and use a variable in here. So we can use the set command, and we can set a variable name. In this case, I'm just going to call it loops because I feel like that makes the most sense. And I'm going to put a value, and this time I'm going to put a 3. I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to hit the delete key, and now I'm going to copy this with Control C and paste it with Control V because that's just the easiest way to do it. And now when I press run, we're going to expect this to run 3 times. So there's the 1, there's the 2, there's the 1, there's the 2, there's the 1 again, and there's the 2. So as you can see, when we used a variable in here, it ran 3 times because we set the variable to be 3. So you can use other things that return a number, and in fact, you can actually also use functions in here as well. So the next thing you're going to see when looking at this loop command is the quotes box. Now, this means that it will take the input literally and not parse math expressions. However, in the case of the loop command, you'll probably never really need to use this. So lastly, we have the section that says drag commands here, and I'm just going to get rid of these commands, but as you can see, we can obviously drag commands here. Just like the normal scripting area, the loop command only accepts commands, so you can't drag a function directly in there. You can drag any command you want into a loop. That actually also includes other loops, which we'll see in just a minute here. But first, let me demonstrate this. I can't actually drop a function into here, just like I couldn't drop a function into the scripting area. I could not also drop our variable in here, again, just like I couldn't drop it in the scripting area. Just like the scripting area, the loop command only accepts commands, and that's why it says drag commands here. And as I mentioned, it only accepts commands, that does mean that you can drag a loop within another loop. And we'll have a look at that a little bit later. So now let's have a look at a couple of things you can do with loops. I'm going to show you an example of how you could increment a number with loops. Under the data commands, there's a command called increment. If you hover over increment, it says increment adds 1 to a variable. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to name a new variable num. And we've already got a variable here called loops that's set to 3, and our number of cycles is set to the variable loops. So effectively, our number of cycles right now is 3. So I'm going to keep that as it is because that sounds like it's pretty good to me. I'm going to copy this num variable and I'm going to set it above our loop because we don't want to increment something that we haven't set. So I'm going to set this to be 1. Now remember that increment adds 1 to a variable. So I'm going to hit Control D to open the debugger, and I'm going to press run. And actually I'm going to put some weights in here so that we can see what's going on. Otherwise it's going to go too fast. So I'm going to press run. Num is set to 1. We enter our loop. It's immediately set to 2. And then it waits. It sets it to 3. It waits. It sets it to 4. So because we set it to 1 and then looped 3 times, and we added 1 each time, we ended up with 4. Pretty easy, right? Let's look at another example. In this example, we're going to decrement a number instead of incrementing a number. So in the last example, we set a number to be 1 and then we incremented it up to 4. In this example, I'm going to set a number to be 4 and then I'm going to use the decrement command to reduce the number. Now decrement is the opposite of increment. Increment will add a number to a variable, or it will add 1 to a variable, and decrement will subtract 1 from a variable. So it does the opposite. So let's have a look at that. We're going to set our num to be 4. I'm actually going to put the weight back up there. Then it's going to loop 3 times. On each iteration of the loop, it's going to subtract 1 from our number. So let's see how that works. 4, 3, 2, 1. And there we go. So that's how you can use a loop to increment a number and to decrement a number. And that's actually an important thing you'll end up doing later on. But for now, let's have a look at another example. I'm actually going to get rid of all of this, and we're going to start over. Go back to the flow commands and drag the loop back in. I'll set the number of cycles to be 5. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to drag another loop. So we're now doing a loop within a loop. I'm going to set this number of cycles to be 10. Before both of the loops, I'm going to set a number to be 1. And at the very end of the loops, I'm going to alert this number. Now I'm going to put an increment command, which adds 1. Every time the command is called, this will add 1 to the variable, in this case num. And now I'm going to press run, and we'll see what happens. So we get 6. And the reason we get 6 is because we set the num variable to be 1, and we then looped for 5 cycles. On every cycle of that 5, we incremented the number. So on the first cycle it was 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6. We then had another loop, a loop within a loop. And on that loop we looped 10 times. However, we didn't have anything in this loop, so that's not really affecting our number. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to drag this into the second loop, and I'm going to press run. And this time we get 51, which is a lot different. And the reason we get 51 is because this is now within the inner loop. So we set the number to be 1. After that, we go into this first loop, which is going to run 5 times. On the first cycle that it runs, it goes into this loop, which runs 10 times. So immediately before this first loop hits its second cycle, we've already incremented num 10 different times. Then it comes out of this inner loop and it comes back into the first loop. This loops on its second cycle, which then sets the inner loop to loop 10 more times. So in total, this will do 50 loops, or this will do 50 increments because it's in this inner loop. The inner loop is going to do 10 loops of the increment command, but it's going to do that 5 times because it's residing within this outer loop here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the set command within this first loop. And I'm going to press run and we'll see what happens. And now we get 11. Now the reason we get 11 here is because every time we come into this top loop, we're setting num to be 1. So on the first iteration of this outer loop here, we come in, we set num to be 1. We then go into the inner loop where we increment num 10 times. So on the first iteration of the outer loop, num is equal to 11. However, when we come back around, we set num to be 1. And then it gets incremented 10 more times and it becomes 11 again. So every time we run this, it will be 11. If I change this number to be 100 and I run this, the number is still going to be 11. If I set this to be 2 and I run this, the number is still going to be 11 because we're always resetting num before it gets into this inner loop. So loops are important because we often want to perform the same actions across a series of data. For instance, you may want to log into multiple accounts on a website. You don't need to program each account individually. Instead, you can use a loop. So I'm actually going to show you an example right now. I'm not going to show you the full code though. Instead, I'm just going to show you the loop part. So let's get rid of this and let's set the loop to be 3. And close all this. Now I'm going to navigate to a form on this website. I'm going to navigate to this simple form. And I've actually already created a custom command, which you don't need to know what that means yet, but it's called fill form. And what this is going to do is on each iteration of this loop, we do need a navigate command here, so let me put that in. So on each iteration of this loop, we're going to come to this web page. We're going to come to this form, and then my custom command is going to fill in this form with random account information. Now, this account information, you will learn how to do this relatively shortly. Don't worry about how it's being done because you will learn that sometime soon. For now, just know that it's all possible because of this loop. I'm not programming each account separately. In fact, I'm only saying one time that you need to fill in this specific text box in this password field and this and this and this. I'm only saying that one time. I'm not saying that 3 times, but we're looping 3 times. So watch how this works. I'm going to press run. It's now navigating to this page. It's now filling in the form with account information. And it's Charles. Hi, my name is Charles. I live in Michigan. I was born in June 5th, 1989. Second one, it's Roland. Hi, my name is Roland, and I live in Indiana, and I was born in November 1st, 1987. And the third time, we have Pearl. Hi, my name is Pearl. I live in Anthony, Florida. I was born July 11th, 1989. So as you can see, we were getting different information, but I did not have to program that 3 different ways. So that's the power of loops. You can program something one time and then you can loop through it multiple times in order to perform that same action across a series of data. I hope you can see the power of loops. This is just a first glance and you'll be seeing these a lot. That's going to do it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.